The village of Eralu and its sacred balance. The village of Eralu sat nestled between ancient trees, its thatched roofs barely visible beneath the dense canopy of the surrounding forest. It was a land of peace, where harmony between nature and people was not just a tradition but a way of life. The villagers believed they were blessed by the spirit of the forest, an unseen force that watched over them, ensuring their prosperity. Their wealth lay not in gold or gemstones but in something far humbler: chickens. Eralu's farmers had perfected the art of raising healthy fowls, and their eggs were sought after in neighboring towns for their rich flavor and rumored mystical properties. The villagers owed their fortune to the balance they maintained with the land, honoring the spirit through sacred rituals and careful stewardship of their resources. To protect their livelihood, the villagers erected barriers, wooden fences, thorny hedges, and charms inscribed with protective symbols. These were meant to deter thieves, whether human or supernatural. Over the years, however, as no real danger had befallen them, the villagers began to view these rituals as mere tradition rather than necessity. Complacency settled in, and though they still performed their ceremonies, the reverence behind them dulled with time. Then, one morning, a young boy named Kolechi ran through the village square, his voice shrill with panic. "The chickens are gone," he cried. At first, the elders dismissed his alarm. A few missing chickens were not uncommon. Foxes and other small predators occasionally slipped past their defenses. But when the farmers went to check their coops, they found them eerily empty. Not a single feather, no sign of struggle, just silence where there should have been the clucking of hens. As the days passed, more livestock vanished without explanation. Chickens, goats, and even a prized cow disappeared overnight. The village, once thriving, now pulsed with unease. No one knew what force had slipped past their barriers. The spirit of the forest had always protected them. Had something changed? Panic set in as whispers spread among the villagers. Some blamed human thieves, others feared dark forces at play. But one thing was certain: the sacred balance of Eralu had been disturbed. And if they could not restore it, their entire way of life would be at stake. The mysterious thief and the hunter's encounter. The village of Eralu buzzed with tension. Farmers paced in frustration, their eyes scanning the now empty coops. What had stolen their chickens so cleanly, leaving behind no blood, no feathers, no tracks? At first, the villagers suspected foxes or leopards, but there were no claw marks, no broken fences. Instead, they found something stranger: white grooves carved into the earth near the coops, long and sinuous, as if something heavy had slithered across the ground. The elders whispered among themselves, recalling old folktales of the spirits that roamed the land. Determined to uncover the truth, 3 of the village's bravest men, Ademu, Cade, and Yinka, volunteered to stand guard that night. Armed with spears, bows, and torches, they took positions around the coops, their eyes sharp and their ears attuned to the stillness of the forest. As midnight approached, the air grew thick and heavy. The usual nighttime chorus of crickets and owls fell into eerie silence. Then, a sound slithered through the darkness, a low, drawn-out hiss that sent chills down their spines. Before they could react, a shimmering form emerged from the shadows. It was a snake, but not just any snake. This creature was massive, its scales reflecting the moonlight in unnatural hues. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, and as it moved, it barely disturbed the grass beneath it. With a speed that defied nature, it lunged into the coop, devouring chickens whole. Ademo let out a battle cry and hurled his spear, but the weapon bounced off the snake's glistening hide. Cade drew his bow, aiming for its glowing eyes, but the creature twisted impossibly fast, dodging the arrow with ease. Yinka swung his machete, but before the blade could connect, the snake reared up, hissing with a sound that reverberated in their chest. The hunters were no match. In the blink of an eye, the serpent coiled and struck, knocking Ademo off his feet and sending Cade stumbling backward. Yinka barely managed to roll away as the snake lashed out again. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the creature slithered into the darkness, vanishing as if it had never been there. Panting and shaken, the three men scrambled to their feet. They had faced wild animals before, but this was something else, something beyond the realm of ordinary beasts. At dawn, they gathered the villagers and recounted the encounter. Fear spread like wildfire. Some whispered that the spirit of the forest had turned against them. Others feared it was an ancient curse awakened by neglecting their rituals. One thing was certain, this was no ordinary thief. And if they did not act soon, the village of Eralu might lose more than just its livestock. The test of the potion and the shocking revelation. Fear had settled over Eralu like a thick fog. The villagers whispered anxiously among themselves, their once peaceful home now plagued by an unknown terror. The elders gathered in the village square, their faces etched with worry. "We must uncover the truth," declared Elder Taiwo, the oldest and most respected among them. "If this creature is among us, hiding in human form, the spirits will reveal it." The decision was made. Every villager would drink a sacred herbal potion, brewed from the rarest roots and leaves known to repel dark forces. If anyone was cursed, the potion would expose them. Under the watchful eyes of the entire village, the testing began. One by one, the villagers stepped forward, drinking the bitter potion. Nothing happened, no convulsions, no signs of possession. The people sighed in relief as each person passed the test. Then, it was Ronke's turn. Ronke, the village herbalist, had always been respected. She was the keeper of knowledge, the healer who tended to the sick and guided the village in matters of the spirit. Yet, as the line grew shorter, she hesitated. "Why the delay?" Ronke asked Elder Taiwo, narrowing his wise eyes. Ronke smiled, though it was strained. "It is unnecessary for me to drink," she said smoothly. "I was the one who helped prepare the potion. Surely, I am beyond suspicion." The villagers murmured among themselves. It was true, Ronke had long been a pillar of their community. But the fear of the unknown was stronger than blind trust. "You must drink," Taiwo said firmly. "None are exempt." A tense silence followed. Finally, Ronke nodded, taking the wooden cup in her hands. She brought it to her lips and drank. For a moment, nothing happened. The villagers held their breath. Then, without warning, Ronke's body convulsed violently. Her limbs jerked, her breathing grew ragged, and she fell to her knees. Gasps of horror rippled through the crowd as her skin darkened, shifting, twisting, until it was no longer skin at all. Shimmering scales spread across her arms and neck, gleaming under the sunlight. Her fingers curled into claws, and her once warm brown eyes glowed with an eerie yellow light. Then, before their very eyes, Ronke's form stretched, unraveling like a nightmare unfolding in broad daylight. Where the village herbalist had stood, a massive serpent now loomed, its glistening coils spiraling outward. It was the very same creature the hunters had seen, its golden eyes burning with intelligence and something else, something almost human. Screams erupted as the villagers fled in terror, scrambling over one another to escape. Mothers clutched their children, men tripped in their haste, and baskets of food were overturned in the chaos. Elder Taiwo, however, did not run. He stood firm, his gaze locked onto the serpent. "Ronke," he called out, his voice strong despite the tremor in his hands. "What have you done?" The massive snake's head turned toward him. For a fleeting moment, the old woman's essence flickered within those glowing eyes. But then, with a deep, guttural hiss, the serpent coiled, ready to strike. The truth had been revealed. But was it too late to save Eralu? The truth behind the curse. The villagers of Eralu stood frozen in shock, their fearful eyes fixed on the monstrous serpent coiled in their midst. Mothers clutched their children, Warriors gripped their spears, and Elder Taiwo stood unmoving, his face unreadable. Then, before anyone could react, the shimmering scales began to fade. Ronke's massive serpent form trembled, shrinking, her glowing yellow eyes dimming. Her body twisted and convulsed as she slowly reverted to her human shape, collapsing onto the ground in a heap. A hush fell over the crowd. The once revered village herbalist, now exposed as something beyond human, lay trembling in the dirt, her hands covering her face. She was sobbing. "Please, forgive me," she choked out, her voice hoarse with despair. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then Elder Taiwo stepped forward. "Ronke," he said sternly. "Tell us the truth." She lifted her face, streaked with tears and smeared with dirt. "I never wanted this," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt anyone." The villagers murmured amongst themselves, some with pity, others with suspicion. Could a cursed being truly be trusted? Ronke inhaled deeply, steadying herself before speaking. "The deal with Bobasuru. Years ago," she began, her voice carrying the weight of sorrow, "my family was dying. My husband, my child, they were wasting away before my eyes. No healer, no prayer, no ritual could save them. I was desperate." She clenched her fist, her nails digging into her palms. "I sought out Bobasuru, the sorcerer who lived beyond the river. He was feared, but I didn't care, I would have done anything to save them." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Bobasuru was a name that had not been spoken in years. Legends of his dark magic lingered in hushed whispers, tales of men who traded their souls for power and of women who vanished in the night, never to be seen again. Ronke continued. "Bobasuru agreed to help, but he demanded an offering. I brought him my most prized hen, the strongest and healthiest among my flock." She let out a bitter laugh. "I thought it would be enough. I was wrong." Her voice dropped to a whisper, heavy with regret. "He laughed at me. He said a single hen was an insult, that the spirits demanded more. But I had nothing left to give. The curse that changed everything." Ronke's shoulders shook as she recounted the moment everything changed. "Bobasuru said he would still grant my wish, but for a price I could not understand." She paused, eyes flickering toward the villagers who once trusted her. "He chanted strange words, smeared a thick, dark paste onto my skin, and breathed into my mouth." He shuddered. "I felt something crawl into me, slithering into my soul. And then it was over. At first, nothing happened. She returned home, believing she had escaped with her humanity intact. And then, that night, she woke to searing pain, her bones twisting, her skin burning. Before she could scream, her voice was gone, replaced by the guttural hiss of a snake. Tears streamed down her face. When I awoke, I found feathers in my hands. Blood on my lips. Her voice cracked. I had eaten my own chickens without even knowing. The hunger was unbearable, and it returned every night." The villagers shuddered. Some turned away, unwilling to hear more. Others stood transfixed, caught between horror and sympathy. "I tried to control it," Ronke pleaded. "I only took what I needed to survive. I never hurt anyone, I swear it." Fear, anger, and doubt. The villagers were silent for a long time. Finally, Cade, one of the hunters who had first seen the serpent, spoke. "You expect us to believe you," he spat. "That you didn't prey on us like the very beast you became." "I have never harmed a villager." Ronke swore. "I swear on my ancestors, I only took livestock." "You're a monster," another man shouted. "She is cursed," cried a woman clutching her child. But then, a softer voice cut through the anger. She was desperate. It was Mama Abibi, the village weaver, her old hands trembling on her walking stick. "Which of us would not have done the same for our families?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, others scowled in defiance. Elder Taiwo studied Ronke carefully. If we let you stay, what will stop you from losing control? What happens if the hunger returns? Ronke bowed her head. I don't know. The villagers recoiled at her admission. Then she must be exiled. Kate shouted. Ronke flinched. Please. This is my home. My family is buried here. Elder Taiwo sighed, his face weary. This is not a decision we can make lightly. We will hold a council at sunset. Ronke nodded, though her hands trembled. She knew her fate now rested in the hands of those she had spent her life protecting. As the villagers dispersed, whispering among themselves, she was left alone in the square. Would Eralu show her mercy, or would she pay the ultimate price for her curse, seeking redemption and the spirit's judgment? The evening air in Eralu was thick with tension. A full moon hung overhead, casting a pale glow over the village as the council gathered to decide Ronke's fate. Fires crackled in the central square, where villagers stood in clusters, whispering anxiously among themselves. Elder Taiwo raised his hands, calling for silence. His deep, steady voice carried the weight of wisdom and history. We have spent too long fearing the consequences of this curse, he declared. But have we stopped to ask ourselves why this happened in the first place? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. We once honored the spirit of the forest, Elder Taiwo continued. We gave thanks for the blessings of our land, the safety of our homes, and the bounty of our farms. But over the years, our devotion became routine. The sacred rituals became empty gestures, and we forgot our place in the balance of nature. The villagers looked at each other uneasily. They knew the truth of his words. This curse is not Ronke's alone to bear, the elder said solemnly. It is a reflection of our neglect. And now, we must seek forgiveness, not just for her, but for all of us. The ritual of atonement. A hush fell over the village as Elder Taiwo laid out the plan. To seek redemption, they would journey to the sacred grove, a hidden place deep within the forest, where the spirit of the land resided. There, they would offer their sincerest prayers and sacrifices. Only then could Ronke's fate be decided. The villagers hesitated. Entering the sacred grove was not something to be done lightly. It was said that those with impure hearts would not return. Yet, one by one, they agreed. By nightfall, the entire village, men, women, and children, began their procession into the forest, carrying torches, offerings of fruit and grain, and the last of their purest livestock. Ronke, bound in ceremonial cloth, walked in the center of the procession, flanked by warriors. Her heart pounded in her chest. This was her last chance, either the spirit would grant her freedom, or she would be doomed to her cursed existence forever. As they walked deeper into the woods, the trees seemed to close in around them. The further they traveled, the quieter the world became. The wind stilled. The night birds fell silent. Even the insects dared not chirp. Then, they reached it, the sacred grove. The spirit's arrival. The clearing pulsed with an unseen energy. The great Iroko tree at its center loomed impossibly tall, its twisted branches stretching toward the heavens. The air shimmered, charged with an unnatural force. The villagers knelt in unison, bowing their heads. Elder Taiwo stepped forward, raising his arms. "O great spirit of the land," he called, his voice echoing through the grove. "We come before you in humility, seeking forgiveness. We have strayed from the path of gratitude, and we beg for your mercy." The villagers joined in, their voices rising in a rhythmic chant. The earth trembled. A low hum filled the air, growing louder until it became a roar. Suddenly, the flames of their torches flickered and died. The clearing was plunged into darkness. A gust of wind tore through the grove, and then, a presence descended upon them. A golden mist swirled in the air, taking the form of a massive, spectral figure. It was neither man nor beast, its shifting form glowing with an ethereal light. Eyes as deep as the void gazed upon the trembling villagers. The judgment begins. Ronke gasped as an invisible force lifted her from the ground. Her body convulsed violently, her bones twisting as pain shot through her veins. "H," she screamed, her voice raw with agony. The spirit's voice echoed from all around them, deep and ancient. "You seek forgiveness. But forgiveness is not given, it is earned." The villagers trembled, pressing their foreheads to the ground. Elder Taiwo remained kneeling but raised his head. "Great Spirit," Ronke was desperate. "She made a mistake, but she has harmed no one in the village. She seeks only to be freed from this curse. Please, show mercy." The spirit's eyes burned brighter. She sought power without understanding the cost. She fed the hunger within her, even as it turned her into something unnatural. Ronke groaned as the pain intensified. The shimmer of scales flickered across her skin, her body caught between her human and cursed forms. "But you, the people of Eralu." The spirit's voice boomed, shaking the trees. "You have abandoned the sacred bond. You have forgotten your place in the cycle. This is your doing as well." The villagers gasped, their shame weighing upon them like heavy stones. Elder Taiwo nodded. "Then tell us, Great Spirit. How can we right this wrong?" The spirit's golden eyes bored into him. A final test must be given. A wind howled through the grove, and a golden blade appeared, hovering in front of Elder Taiwo. "Ronke's fate rests in your hands. If you wish to break the curse, one must be willing to take her burden." A horrified silence followed. Ronke's heart sank. "No," she whispered. "I won't let anyone else suffer because of me." But before she could speak further, a voice rang out. "I will take it." Gasps erupted as Mama Abibi, the village weaver, stepped forward. She was old, frail, her body bent with age, yet her eyes were resolute. "I have lived long enough," she said. "Ronke still has many years ahead of her. If a sacrifice must be made, let it be mine." Tears streamed down Ronke's face. "Mama, no." The spirit hummed in contemplation. "A noble offer. But sacrifice is not always the answer." The golden blade vanished. The wind stilled. Instead, the village must restore the balance. The spirit's form began to fade. Honor the land. Honor the spirits. Let Ronke serve as protector, not monster. If she can resist the hunger, she will be free. Ronke collapsed to the ground, the pain vanishing. The shimmer of scales faded. She was human. The villagers erupted in cheers and sobs. The spirit was gone, but its warning remained. That night, under the full moon, the people of Eralu renewed their sacred bond, vowing never again to take their blessings for granted. And Ronke. She would spend the rest of her life ensuring that no one else in Eralu would ever have to make the same desperate mistake. But deep in the forest, where the spirit had once stood, the golden mist lingered, watching, waiting. Because balance, once broken, could never be taken for granted again. The final trial and Ronke's fate. The village of Eralu held its breath as the spirit's decree echoed in their hearts. The curse was not yet broken. Ronke had one final trial to endure. The golden mist had vanished, but its presence lingered in the villagers' minds. The fate of Ronke, and perhaps the village itself, depended on her ability to resist the hunger that had haunted her for years. Elder Taiwo turned to the weary villagers, his voice firm yet gentle. "Ronke must prove that she can control the beast within. If she can resist the transformation for one night, she will be free. But she cannot do this alone. We must stand by her, as a village, as a family." The villagers exchanged hesitant glances. Fear still clung to many of them, but others nodded in agreement. Ronke had stolen from them, but she had also suffered. If she was to earn redemption, it would be through their support. The night of the trial. The elders led Ronke to the village square, where an ancient circle of protection had been drawn in the dirt using sacred herbs. A mixture of crushed bitter leaf, camwood, and dried palm fronds formed a ring large enough for Ronke to sit in the center. Candles were placed at the 4 cardinal points, their flickering flames representing the watchful eyes of the forest spirit. You must stay within the circle, Elder Taiwo instructed. The moment you step out, the curse will take hold. Ronke nodded, fear and determination warring in her eyes. The villagers gathered around, chanting prayers that had not been spoken in decades. The melody of their voices wove through the air, mingling with the rustling of the trees. The night stretched before them, long and uncertain. At first, nothing happened. Ronke sat with her legs crossed, her hands gripping her knees. She could feel the energy of the herb surrounding her, keeping the beast at bay. But as the hours crept by, the hunger stirred. Her skin prickled. A deep itch spread beneath her flesh, crawling through her bones like 1,000 tiny needles. Sweat trickled down her temple. Then, the pain struck. It was as if fire had been poured into her veins. Her vision blurred, colors bleeding together in unnatural swirls. Her mouth twisted, fangs threatening to emerge. Her fingers curled into claws, her spine arching as an unbearable pressure filled her body. No, she gritted out, slamming her fist into the dirt. The villagers held their breath. Some turned away, unable to bear the sight of her suffering. Her limbs trembled violently. Every part of her screamed to give in, to let the transformation happen, to let the hunger win just once more. You are stronger than this, a voice called through the haze of pain. She forced her eyes open. Mama Abibi stood at the edge of the circle, her old hands clasped together. We are here, child, she whispered. You are not alone. Ronke gasped as another wave of agony crashed through her, her body convulsing. The beast clawed at her mind, whispering temptations, promising relief. Just one more. Just one. No one will know. Her vision darkened. The candles flickered. No, she screamed. I am not a monster. She dug her nails into the earth, her muscles locking as she fought with everything she had. The hunger would not define her. She would not let the curse win. The prayers around her grew louder, the voices of the villagers rising like a wave, crashing against the darkness threatening to consume her. The sky began to change. The first hints of dawn painted the horizon in soft hues of gold and lavender. The hunger wailed. The beast snarled. Then, silence. The pressure lifted. Ronke gasped, her body falling limp. The heat faded. The itching ceased. The darkness retreated. She was still human. The breaking of the curse. Elder Taiwo stepped forward cautiously. Ronke. She lifted her head, her eyes no longer glowing with the unnatural yellow of the snake. They were brown, warm, and human. Tears streamed down her face. I did it, she whispered. I fought it, then I won. The villagers stood frozen for a moment, stunned. Then, as the realization set in, a cheer erupted. They rushed forward, surrounding Ronke, lifting her to her feet. For the first time in years, she felt the warmth of their embrace, not as a monster, but as one of them. Mama Abibi pressed a kiss to Ronke's forehead. You are free, my child. The elders gathered, their faces alight with wonder. The spirit has accepted our plea, Elder Taiwo declared. Ronke's curse is lifted, and so is the darkness that loomed over our village. The people of Eralu had not only saved one of their own, but they had restored the sacred balance. A new beginning. That day, the villagers prepared a great feast in Ronke's honor. The once fearful gazes turned into ones of admiration and respect. She was no longer a cursed woman, but a symbol of resilience and redemption. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ronke stood at the edge of the village, gazing toward the forest. The sacred grove was quiet, but she could still feel its watchful presence. She placed a hand over her heart. "I will honor the balance," she whispered. "Always." The wind carried her promise through the trees. And for the first time in years, the village of Eralu slept in peace.